Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Snyder's Inc. Today, we'll continue the reaction videos. You know how it goes. Got more Mr. Ballen 411. Part 11. Before we get at it, I need all of you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You don't need to comment anything yet. Just hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps me out. The more you help me out, the better it is for me. And the more videos you get, and the cooler videos we'll get. So, and you will have a better looking setup. So, there you go. Now you can actually see it instead of the light. Alright. Let's get into this.
People are going missing all over North America under baffling circumstances.
These are 3 people found in impossible places. Missing 411 Part 11, as I said. But the 3 people found in impossible places.
Some cases, people will be looking right at someone. They'll turn around and turn back, and they're gone. Or you'll have instances where people will go missing and then turn up again in places that are basically impossible to get to. One man named David Politis, who's a former police detective, when he learned about some of these strange cases and saw that no one was looking into it, he began to do the research, and he spent tens of thousands of hours researching thousands of these cases, and they're so bizarre. As I read through them, I'm taking note of the really strange cases and highlighting those on my YouTube channel. But before we get into
I need to find these books though. Need to find them.
Today's Missing 411 stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all I do, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. If that's of interest to you, then please offer the like button a Coke, but secretly swap it out with Pepsi. Also subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications.
Pepsi's way better though, so you're getting a way better deal with that one. Should do the opposite.
So you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. Alright, let's get into today's stories.
Charmin Ultra Soft is twice as absorbent, so you can use less.
Ladies and gentlemen, our takeover of General Motors is complete.
Dr. Abel, we now possess GM.
In 1969, Robert Winters was a 78-year-old retired logger living in Oregon. He was a family man, he loved the outdoors, and he really loved going hunting with his 3 sons. In early October 1969, Robert and his 3 sons headed off for their annual hunting trip that they would do at Sparks Lake. Now, Sparks Lake is an area that they had been hunting for 20 years. Ooh. They know this area inside and out. They arrive at Sparks Lake and they set up their camp right at the base of this mountain that was a part of the area that they would be hunting in. And for the first couple of days, everything was going great. On October 8th, they found out that there was this big snowstorm coming in later that night. They still wanted to go hunting that day, so they decided that instead of going up into that mountain and hunting up there, they would stay at lower elevation, around where their camp was. So the 4 of them split up and they took up different positions all around this lake, but they're all in the same general vicinity, and they all hunt for the day, and then they all come back to the campsite that night. Except Robert didn't come back, and as it got darker and the snow started to fall, his sons got really worried and they went out looking for him, but quickly saw that
Robert is 76 years old, if I heard that right. 76-year-old isn't going to be walking around a forest day, especially if he knows snow is coming, so that's not good that he couldn't be found.
got to get other people involved in this, because this snowstorm's coming in and we don't know where he is. So they call the sheriff's office. The sheriff's department launches this massive search right away, but unfortunately, over the first 24 hours, not only did they not find Robert or any sign of where he was, but over 18 inches of snow dumped all over the area. Because of the snowfall, it made searching the area on foot really difficult, so they called in a couple helicopters to scour the area from the air. And it was at this time that one of the helicopters picked up tracks at 7,100 feet right near the lake. And the tracks were actually discounted, and people said that can't be Robert's, because that would mean he would have had to go up almost 2,000 feet in elevation when he and his sons had all agreed We're not going to go higher because of the snow. And Robert was an accomplished outdoorsman that would know in an emergency survival situation, especially in a cold environment, you don't go uphill. Temperatures drop as you go uphill. Risk of hypothermia increases, plus you're burning more energy trying to get up a mountain. So they said that cannot be Robert's tracks. 5 days after Robert went missing, no sign of him has been found, and the search was terminated. 9 months later, a doctor was on vacation in the same area near Sparks Lake, and he discovered next to a tree up around that area where those tracks had been found by the helicopter at 7,100 feet, he found lying against a tree a rifle, some clothes, a boot, a glove, and a pair of glasses. The doctor informed the sheriff's department, who came out and confirmed that these all belonged to Robert Winters, but oddly enough, there was no blood anywhere on the clothes, and there were no bone fragments or any...
Robert, where did you go? Where did you disappear to? Because you went... So apparently you went 2,000 feet up a mountain in cold weather and took off clothes and left your sniper. Robert, what were you doing, man? That's not safe. Especially for a 76-year-old. Those kids gotta be worried as hell, man.
remains anywhere in the area because they brought searchers out and combed that whole area. So there was no indication that Robert had actually even died. Even stranger was, it looked like the clothes had been removed on purpose. Everything was stacked neatly next to this tree. The only other new piece of evidence that we would ever find about him is a year later, his dentures were found in that area. So again, there's no remains of Robert, just his various belongings that were found in that area. The family wanted to move forward with funeral arrangements, but they needed the coroner to sign a death certificate. The coroner refused for over a year, saying there's no sign he actually died. But eventually the coroner said it's also impossible for him to be alive at this point. So they were able to get a death certificate even though there was nothing ever found of him. It seems very unlikely that Robert, who was
interesting that the coroner kept trying to convince them, no, that he might be alive for over a year, yet still. But then, after a year, he's like, okay, he clearly would not be alive at this point, so he's dead. Interesting.
was a skilled outdoorsman.
By the way, I apologize for my really shitty background here. Back environment going on here. Wish I could make it so you couldn't see this part, but,
who had hunted this particular area for 20 years and had agreed with his sons that it was a bad idea to go up in elevation because of the storm, defied all of that and went almost 2,000 feet up in elevation, removed his clothes neatly and put them on the ground next to a tree, and then vanished without a trace. But then how do we reconcile those tracks that were seen from the helicopter up near where all of his belongings were found? Unless those tracks weren't Robert's. On February 19th, 1999, Dr. Catherine Wong, who was a pediatrician in San...
I was going to go back on the Robert thing. I have no clue what happened, but I feel so bad for the fact those kids now have their dad who disappeared and they have no idea what he did with them. What happened to him. That must suck every day for them.
San Jose, California. She was 47 years old. She and her husband, John, along with two relatives and two of their three kids, drove 4 hours northeast from their home in Milpitas, California, to Bear Valley Ski Resort. The family loved to go skiing any chance they could, so Dr. Wong was actually a fairly skilled skier. This would be their first time at Bear Valley Ski Resort, which is a resort located about 30 miles south of Lake Tahoe. The Wongs arrive, they start skiing, it's this beautiful day. At about 11:30 in the morning, everybody stops and goes into the lodge for lunch. After lunch, their kids and the other relatives decide to stay in the lodge for a little bit longer, so Dr. Wong and her husband John decide to go skiing on their own. And at some point, Dr. Wong and John decide to go down separate trails. John goes down his trail, and Dr. Wong will go down her trail, which was not a difficult trail. It's one she'd been on earlier in the day, and she doesn't show up at the bottom. John's down at the bottom. He's waiting for her. After a little bit of time, he starts to think, okay, maybe she got hurt. Maybe she fell down. I'm not sure. He starts making his way over and looking up the trail. He can't see anything. There's no indication that someone's been hurt. And he starts looking for another 20, 30 minutes. Can't find her. Ski Patrol goes up, and they're looking for tracks coming off of the trail, a sign that maybe someone fell off and went into the woods. But there's no tracks anywhere of somebody leaving the trail.
What? Hold on, so she went down this trail she's been on multiple times that day, or at least once or twice that day. Goes down it, yet never reaches the bottom of it. Did she actually go down it, though? Did anyone actually see her go down it?
So the Ski Patrol gets in touch with the sheriff's office, who come out and launch an absolutely massive search. But by the end of the day, there was no sign of Dr. Wong, and even more strangely, they had searched all 75 trails on Bear Valley Ski Resort, and there was not one indication that someone had skied off of any of the trails or even walked off any of the trails. The search continued for another 2 days, no sign of Dr. Wong. They began reviewing all of the security footage, and any instance where she was on camera, there seemed to be nothing wrong. At the end of that second day, the weather got much worse, temperatures dropped, and this huge snowstorm rolled in, and the folks in charge of the search decided it was too dangerous to continue. Plus, at this point, they believed that it was impossible for Dr. Wong to even still be alive. At this point, they told the family that they are considering Dr. Wong deceased, and they terminated the search. It was around this time.
Okay, so I can understand not wanting to do it because the weather's bad, but why would you then just go under the assumption? Why would you tell a family that you're just not going to search again because you think because she's not been found today, she's clearly dead? That's a weird way to go about it. I think these people don't want to do their job.
That newspapers and people in the area began to speculate that this was not an accident, that either Dr. Wong willingly decided to vanish or foul play was involved. There was no proof of either one, but it just seemed so bizarre that there was this massive search and there was just no sign of her anywhere, no tracks, no anything. It just felt like something's amiss here, we just don't know what it is. Her husband John ended up taking a lie detector test, which he passed, and investigators began digging into their marriage a bit to see if there was some underlying problems. And it looked for all the world like it was 20 years of a very stable, healthy, happy relationship. There was no sign that Dr. Wong would be looking to, escape her life and run off with someone else. 4 months after she went missing, her remains and ski equipment were found about a half-mile south of the ski resort in this deep ravine, heavily forested, well off any marked trail. Bone fragments and remains were scattered over a quarter-mile trail along this ravine. This area had not been previously searched because when they initially launched the search for her, this area was so steep and so difficult to get to, plus there was 8-foot snow drifts from the ski resort all the way to that area, that they decided it would have been impossible for her to get there. So how did she end up in this impossible area, and why weren't there any tracks leaving the mountain? Some say the scarcity and dispersal of her bones over that quarter-mile track indicates that after she had been deceased, animals had kind of ravaged her remains. Others say that an animal is responsible for this attack, and that's why her remains are scattered over a quarter-mile track in this impossible area. But what kind of an animal is able to sneak up and grab a person off of a very populated ski resort and drag them this half-mile away without leaving any tracks or raising any suspicion?
I don't know. What you do? Go away. I don't know what could... Yeah, that's weird, the fact that she was found a half-mile away in an area they assumed would be impossible for a person to get to. She got thing, and her bones are, her bone fragments are just scattered within a quarter mile of the area. That's so weird. What did that to her?
In 1991, Corey Fay was a 17-year-old high school student in Beaverton, Oregon. On November 23, 1991, Corey and 2 of his friends decided to go elk hunting. Corey was not an avid hunter, but he went hunting enough that he was competent, and he had taken survival training and was always very well equipped anytime he went out on a hunt. So the 3 of them load up in a truck, they make their way out to this hunting site, and when they get there, they decide to split up and meet back up at the truck at 6:30 that night. That night at 6:30, the other two hunters came back to the truck, but not Corey. He was nowhere to be found. The other two hunters briefly went out looking for...
Why did they go the separate ways? That's why did they go their separate ways? Why couldn't you have just stayed together? That's what I need to know. Why?
Corey, and they couldn't find him, so they called the sheriff's department, who comes out and they launch this absolutely epic search. They had helicopters, they had horse teams, they had 200...
I like the thought of a horse team. That's what I wanted for me if I would go missing. Give me the horses, baby.
150 ground searchers. They had 7 of the world's best scent-sniffing dogs in the whole world are a part of this search. In over 10 days, that group covered 12 square miles where Corey would have been. Towards the end of this 10-day period, when this all-star search team has come up with nothing, people began to wonder if the other two hunters had accidentally shot and killed Corey and maybe buried him. But those search dogs never found a gravesite. The official search was called off on December 1st, but many volunteers stayed out for weeks and weeks, combing the area, going well beyond the bounds of that initial 12-mile area they searched, and nothing was ever found. The sheriff's department that was in charge of this search was so perplexed by the fact that this amazing team of searchers couldn't find anything that they ended up contacting the FBI, which indicates they were suspecting foul play, because that's the only reason the FBI would get involved. But almost nothing happened in Corey's case for nearly a year. In September of 1992, two hunters were hunting about 10 miles away from where Corey had gone missing, and they discover a rifle, a backpack, and a jacket. They don't know whose it is, so they turn it over to the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department comes out, and they're able to confirm that they all belonged to Corey Fay. A new search was ordered right around that area where his belongings were found, and all these searchers came out and did a grid search, and all they could find were a couple of bone fragments and his tooth. No large bones, no rib cage, no skull, nothing. And interestingly, they also never found his pants or his...
Interesting. So he disappeared. They do search. These expert searchers couldn't find anything for him. He called these volunteers who went beyond the limit of where the police and these searchers went. They didn't find nothing. The FBI couldn't really do anything. They finally find this bag and a couple of bone fragments, but nothing humongous, nothing like big, no big bones at all. And they can't find anything on him. That's so weird. Oh, plus they never find his clothes. So I think what he's about to say is like, what the hell happened to this guy?
Boots. But now that they had some of his remains, the sheriff's department was looking at where they were found and looking at the time of the year when he had gone missing, and they realized that to go from where he went missing to 10 miles away, 3,000 feet up in elevation to where some of his remains were found, he would have been in waist-deep snow for over 5 miles. People were skeptical about him making this trek because it didn't make sense, but his family in particular really didn't believe it. Corey's grandparents said in an interview that Corey had taken these survival courses that he would talk about all the time, and one of the main things they teach you is in a survival situation when you're on a mountain, in particular when it's cold, you never go up. If you go up in elevation, temperatures will drop, the risk of hypothermia increases. So for him to have wound up 10 miles away and 3,000 feet up in elevation is basically doing the opposite of what he was trained to do. And his grandparents said that Corey was incredibly level-headed. There's no reason that in a real survival situation that he would have just thrown that out the window. He would have relied on his training. So the million-dollar question is, why are his belongings and bone fragments 10 miles away and 3,000 feet up in elevation? Did he defy...
I think what happened, and this is the thing that people don't understand, is that when you're in a survival situation, even most level-headed people cannot be level-headed at times. I'm pretty sure that's what happened here, where he just wanted to get to where he could figure out where his safety was. He went up to see if he can get a good look on where safety was before going back down, and it freaked with him.
his training
And maybe some of his body thing because he fell down the goddamn mountain.
and go there on his own, or did an animal attack him and drag him there? But if it's the latter, what kind of animal drags a 17-year-old, his rifle, and his backpack 10 miles up 3,000 feet of elevation in over 6 feet of snow? And where is the rest of him? All we ever found were a couple of bone fragments and a tooth. So like all of these missing 411 cases, we're left with a lot of unanswered questions, because that's the whole deal with missing 411. These are baffling. But that doesn't stop us from speculating about what could be happening. And not only will I respond to the early commenters, I'll also pin the best theory at the top of the comments section. If you want to learn more about Missing 411, please check out David Paulides' book series called Missing 411. I provided a link in the description below where you can purchase those books. Also, David Paulides.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this reaction video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Comment your best theory on what you think is going on in these stories here. Comment what you think down below. Thank you all for joining me, and I will see you for the next one.